Religion and science are the two fundamental ways people know things about the world, and the fundamental ways that people think about truth in the world. We wanted to know if the people who are thought to be the most scientific would ever interface with religion, given that in the public imagination, there is the conception that scientists aren't religious, that they don't have that much to do with religion, that they might be anti-religious, and that perception is actually pretty pervasive. We're finding that not all scientists think that religion and science are in conflict, that a surprising number think that they're independent or even have the ability to collaborate. Most of our scientists believe in God, many gods, or a higher power. Now, there's various ways of viewing gods. Science and religion tend to connect in the public imagination in almost every society. Communities, especially Black and Latino communities that are vastly underrepresented in science and technology careers, are overrepresented in certain kinds of religious traditions. And so if people in those traditions have stereotypes about who scientists are, I think we need to really dispel those stereotypes and to try to even use religion in some ways to kind of get people into science. And so there is a sense where scientists don't really talk about this very much. There is the perception among some that they will be discriminated against if they talk about their religious tradition.
For me, science is one of the motivators to interrogate the boundaries of where things exist in the natural world and where they do not exist in the natural world. I do think that science should proceed unhindered from religious influence. I think that's a different question from whether scientists, have their own religious beliefs as humans and as practicing scientists. But I do believe the scientific methodology, that should largely be pursued independently of religious consideration.
Science and religion, one's a system of facts, of hypotheses, getting facts, developing conclusions based on facts, and the other is belief, something that sustains your soul, and I think that's good.
Well, the way I view it is it's process-based. I see science as based on the scientific method, and I see religion as being faith-based, and I personally don't see any connection between the two. My faith is pragmatism. I look at what works better than others.
I did grow up with religion. It was not a religion that was dogmatic. It was a kind of a questioning religion. It allowed a lot of different ideas. Religion was really about being a good person, treating other people well.
I was raised in the Catholic faith, somewhat half-heartedly by my parents, and sort of wandered away from that in my mid-teenager years. That upbringing, especially some of the catechism teachings of what is right and wrong and ideas of stewardship of the world that we live in, were pretty strongly inculcated in me.
People I interviewed made this argument. They said, gosh, wish we knew more about this so that we could address people, talk to them in a more intelligent and sensitive way. Christians and Jews and Muslims and Hindus, none of them say that they're practicing a different kind of science than scientists who are atheists or completely non-religious. There is the fear that religion could perhaps taint science. So in the most absolute and abstract terms, scientists see science as being a very different kind of knowledge framework than religion. There are definitely scientists who find a sense of almost a spiritual sensibility in science itself. They see their scientific work as providing a kind of beauty and awe about the world that really for them is almost a spiritual experience. So they see their scientific work, they're almost giddy.
And one of the reasons I like physics is a lot of the relationships in physics, I think, are beautiful. One of the fundamental concepts in physics is symmetry. It's beautiful in the sense that the way that the universe is interconnected. There are many connections that I'm just in awe of. You learn A, you learn B, and then you find out that there's an underlying connection between A and B, and it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing.
I feel that the actual doing of the science, to some extent, it intersects with what I would consider my spiritual life. That life appreciating beauty in the natural world, appreciating community in the human world. I'm generally struck day by day by how beautiful biology is and how beautiful cells are. It's like looking at an amazing work of art.
I do believe that eventually science can have all the answers, but that's more in terms of biology or physics. But there's so much about society that's not biology, it's not physics, it's not chemistry. I mean, it's human interaction that I don't think science will be able to explain fully. But does it really matter if science can't explain that? Why not just, it's there, embrace it? Science is really good at the how. How did we come to be here? But the why of we're here, I don't think science can address that at all.
Many scientists like myself grew up in some faith-based tradition, and as they became more involved in science, for some folks, that complements their faith-based tradition, and for some it has largely replaced their faith-based tradition. There are certain scientists where I've met where there's an idea that the scientific method can basically explain anything if you design the experiments and apply it right.
Given my belief that you have the scientific method versus faith-based, I don't see where it has a place in a scientific group or a research group. There are limits to our knowledge, but inside that boundary, I think we can discover almost anything given enough time and resources.
When we interviewed people and surveyed them, this would come up when we ask scientists in their own words to explain the limits of science. So the idea that, science is very good at explaining how the natural world works, but not why it's there or the purpose of it. And that scientists who thought that there was a limit to what science could explain, science tells us it just has excellent tools for telling us how the natural world works, but not why it's there or what it's for.
I do feel that science is particularly useful for interrogating how things happen. And I've kind of communicated this idea to my students over the years. It's particularly ill-suited for answering the question of why things happen. I'm not sure that science will ever be able to tell us, for instance, why different human beings perceive different works of art differently or what they appreciate about them. These are, to me, kind of non-scientific questions in a way.
Scientists are coming from nations where there are religious traditions that they bring with them. There are Hinduism and Islam and Buddhism, for example, which are not represented in greater numbers in the U.S. So scientists need to have a somewhat nuanced understanding of religion to even understand their own workplace and how to work well with other scientists.
There are many practicing scientists who I would say are probably fairly militantly atheistic. Not all of them, but that's a view that's probably more dominant in the scientific community than in other communities. I think as I aged, both as a scientist and a human, I really mellowed out on that view a lot because it might be some of the nature of the work that we've done in my lab, where much of it is astonishingly beautiful and mysterious.
There is actually a population of scientists out there who, when there are common projects and ideas that might be had, so for example, using science to increase justice in the world, so climate care, there's certain forms of science that might be used for medical advancement, for decreasing illness, increasing health. Scientists often want very much, actually, to collaborate with religious communities.
Our aesthetic considerations or wonder and awe are those motivators for me in my own scientific work. I don't presume to know who God is or what God wants, but I do feel, and this is where my agnosticism and spirituality comes, that there's something out there, there's some entity out there. I wouldn't put it as watching over us, I would put it more as that connects all of us.
I think it's probably interesting to members of the public that any scientist would want this, and is a useful way in which this research starts to dispel, I think, some really entrenched stereotypes that I know are out there from my previous studies. This allows us to kind of, not just listen to the loudest voices out there about what scientists think, not just listen to the people who write the most, but get a really broad sense of what scientists in different national contexts might think about things.
Will we ever know everything? No, because the universe is so vast. But it's going to be fun learning.
There are consequences if the public has stereotypes about who scientists are and what they do. Certain kinds of stereotypes can prevent children from going into science. I do think that if the public's imagination is challenged a little bit about who scientists are, there is the practical possibility of increasing support for science. It can help both people in the scientific community understand themselves better, and I think can lead to better research collaboration, potentially better public outreach, actually even a better work experience.
What's the old saying? It's the journey, not the destination. And the journey's fun.